Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is Krishna Mukherjee from ETS, welcoming you all to the Economic Times live webinar, Accelerate Data Management and DevOps with Virtual Data for Peace. This webinar is brought to you by the Economic Times Edge, powered by Algorithm Technologies. In today's world, we all require new applications, whether mobile or collaborative, with a strong focus on analytics. However, many organizations lack enough resources to meet that demand. Costly storage, resources, and to manage their business are creating a lot of problems for organizations. The need of the is a system that visualizes production system data and test master data, delivering almost instant, non-destructive access to full or subset volumes of data for application test development. To help us understand more about these, let me hand over to Rakesh Mahan, leader Data Ops, IBM, and Venkatesh Iyer, Chief Technical Architect, Algorithm Technologies. Welcome, Rakesh and Venkatesh. Thank you for joining today. Before I hand it over to them, request you all to be please present till the end of the webinar and also get your questions for the Q&A session. Also visit webinar website for detailed terms and conditions. With that, let me hand it over to our first speaker for today, Rakesh. Over to you, Rakesh.
Very innovative solution which has been recently launched by IBM to cater to the DevOps requirement and challenges that we are facing on a daily basis, irrespective of the industry. Before I start, let me give you an elevator pitch, which you can pin it on your wall so that you can come back to it after 30 minutes to see what kind of value this solution brings on the table. So the elevator pitch of this solution is it reduces the DevOps cycle time from 22 days to 22 minutes with a savings of 90% on the storage cost. So this is the kind of value that it is bringing on the table. Now, how are we doing it? We'll go through the subsequent slides to figure out. And if it looks like a fairy tale story, trust me, you don't need to be very surprised about it because it has been a proven solution. We have already have 3,000 customers on this solution across the globe. And recently, in the last 8-9 months, it has been launched in India. And in such a short span of time, we already have around 6 to 7 enterprise level customers. So without any further ado, let me go to slide number 2 to give you a brief slide number 2, which is talking about an agenda. So we'll first talk about the problems and challenges that we are facing on a daily basis. Then we'll talk about the VDP solution, the architecture of it, the very fabric which enables such kind of a value that we usually bring to our customers. Then what would be a typical day once you adopt a solution like VDP on your regular practice, DevOps practice? Then we'll talk a little brief about what are the different use cases that the solution can be used for, and then the business benefits. So let me tell you one very important thing about this package or this solution. Whenever we have pitched it to any of our customers, the value comes in lock, stock, and barrel. We have never given this solution to any customer without a preempt realization of the ROI. So customer has seen the return on its investment on this solution, and then only they have adopted it. So this is a solution which is having profound tangible benefits to you, to your regular DevOps challenges. And then, of course, how we are going to put it across to the enterprise. What are the different layers of governance that your IT team needs to maintain to squeeze the maximum juice out of this solution. Okay, moving on to the slide number 3. And before I go there, please note down all your questions, whatever you have, and we'll be very happy to address all your queries once we wrap up the session. So in the slide number 3, you can see which is how at what rate the data is growing. I can remember one of my interactions with probably I think the third or the fourth largest bank in the country. And as for the GM of the IT department, he told me a very revealing data. Till 2016 or 17, whatever the data the bank had accumulated, the same amount of data they accumulated in just 2 years. So from 2016 to 2018, the same amount of data got generated, what they generated in the last 15, 16 years, which was very revealing, at the same time pretty overwhelming. Because if you do not have a plan or a framework to contain that kind of a data, then we're going to keep on spending millions and millions on simply provisioning that data. So the point which the slide is trying to make is the data is growing exponentially, and likewise, the copy requirement of the data is also growing. For example, if my core banking data or my core SAP data is at 30 terabyte, I will require similar size of the databases, like 30 terabytes of each, for every copy requirement. So any business development, business application development team or the MIS team, they will also require similar size of the data as a copy of the master database. So starting from production, if you see one block, backup a DR 2 blocks, then dev test QA 3 blocks. So likewise, in a series, the number of copies also grows exponentially. So next slide, in the slide number 4, it's more or less giving the same impression, which is how copy of the core application data, or any application data for that matter, remains a big challenge, a big problem. Your core banking data or your core application data grows, but that needs to be transferred to another business unit, that needs to be copied for backup or DR, remains a perennial challenge for every industry or every enterprise. So in the slide number 5, what we are talking about is different challenges. So in the 30,000 feet view, in the last 2 minutes, we talked about how data is growing exponentially and how copy of those data, the requirement of the copies of the data also remain a big challenge. Now in this slide, we'll talk about 7 challenges, major challenges the bank. We're just taking an example of the banking industry. The similar challenges are always there in any other industry, for that matter. So we'll drill down further on each and every challenges. But just to name a few: uncontrolled inventory loan, sequential testing, which means absence of parallel testing. Then where do I need to go for getting the test data? Then what is my time to market? Because if I need to come up with an enhancement, starting from conceiving that idea till the materialization of that idea and then rolling it out for my consumers, what is the time to market? Then am I lacking the full-scale testing because of the lack of infrastructure? What are the concerns on security and governance if I'm giving a copy of the data to my incumbent, which is an SI, system integrator? Where is he keeping the copy of the data? Has he destroyed the data or not? And at the advent of this GDPR or data protection law kind of policies, the regulators are pretty strict. Then how am I going to be regulated in this field? And then last but not the least is about lack of automation, and there is no continuous integration because it's all ad hoc manner. So right now, if you feel at this slide a little perplexed, a little confused, don't worry, you are not alone there. We will go one by one, drill down further, and try to explain you what are the very fabric of those challenges. So going to the slide number 7, where we will substantiate each and every problem one by one. So, say, for example, uncontrolled inventory loan. I'll give you a little glimpse of a day with the GM of an IT department in a bank. So, what happens? So, for example, the one a mobile application team comes to the GM asking for infrastructure to loan out so that they can do the development and testing. Now, the GM writes a check, gives this inventory to the team, and with the understanding that the team will wrap up this entire activity within 7 days' time and give the infrastructure back to the GMIT. Now, as you know, the DevOps cycle is a never-ending cycle. More you start developing, the more you start enhancing or bringing out a more additional feature, it takes a lot of time, which is not even in their control. So that gets into an infinite loop, and then when the GMIT comes back to the application team asking to return back the infrastructure, they are in a helpless situation. They say that we need it for some more time. At the same time, the other business unit teams, say for example, the loan origination team is standing in the queue to loan out the same infrastructure because remember, GMIT has only one UAT development UAT environment to loan out. So this is called lack of parallel testing environment. So that gets into an infinite loop, kind of a ping ball game where the GMIT goes to the application team, the application cuts their sorry face in front of the GMIT, asking for more time, and the other application team, the business application team, suffer because of that. So this creates a very kind of an impact on the not only on the kind of a work pressure that the GMIT would have, but also impacts the bottom line somehow. Because imagine the bank one coming up with an enhancement which is drawing more and more consumer interest. The other bank, because of the lack of this parallel inventory, is not able to come up with a similar or advanced enhancement. So they get stuck, and that impacts the bottom line. So this is one issue that predominantly in many industries they face. Go to the next slide, which is more or less synonymous to what I just explained, the sequential testing. Because of availability of limited infrastructure, the testing, the development, the quality analysis all happen in a sequential manner. You cannot have it in a parallel manner. And we're going to talk about how this solution is going to facilitate that. I just want to ensure that you understand the gravity of this problem. Many a times this gets ignored because many leaders who write check for such infrastructure assume that there is no solution to this problem. Actually, there is a solution, and this is what we are going to discuss today. So, moving on, in the slide number 9, you can see another dimension of this problem is where to get the data for testing. Do I need to go to my DBAs to create the copies manually? Or do I have the access to the production, which you forget about it, will never have an direct access to your production? Can I fabricate the synthetic data at the advent of GDPR and DPL, data protection laws? I'll definitely have to fabricate the data. I cannot share the real data, customer sensitive data with my SIs. If I'm copying the data, can I condition it? Can I assemble it with other application data? all these are real life challenges. The message that this slide is trying to give here is there a single source or a single point of contact, SPOC, for all my copy data requirement? I don't think we do have right now. So that's another aspect of this problem statement. Then remember, I was talking about moving on to the next slide, slide number 10. You can see the time to market. If you do not get the basic infrastructure to do your DevOps activities, to test your new features, the data, the idea that you have conceived on the whiteboard, if you do not have the basic infrastructure to put it into action, then the very purpose is defeated. You cannot roll out those enhancements as quickly as possible. So if you try to understand the physics of the copy data management, then you can see if you have a production data and you have, say, for example, 1 gig of network speed, then you will probably need 5 days to create 5 physical copies of a size of a database of 5 terabytes. That's the very basic physics. Probably some DBAs would come up and say that, no, I am doing it in probably a couple of hours. Now, when you say that you are doing it in a couple of hours, you might have a high speed bandwidth, or you might be doing a subsetting of it. Or even if you're not doing both these of things, still you are consuming your time. As a DBA, your main KPI should be how to condition the database, how to optimize the tables and the rows of the database so that the performance can be optimal. Your KPI, so to say, is not getting busy in giving the copy of the database to your colleagues. That's not how your KPIs will be measured. Your KPIs will be measured how optimally you are maintaining the database. So if we focus more on the physics or more on the dynamics or the time that it takes to create copies and give it to the different requirements, it takes that much of time. And then eventually you lose that lead time, or you get consumed with the gestation period in creating the database, a copy for the end users. Now moving on to the slide number 11, this is one of the perennial problems in the industry. I cannot name the bank, but you must have experienced it in the past, that one of the mobile banking application got crashed and didn't work for almost so many days. And to add to that, Gartner says that if you find a bug within the first 5 days of application development, it will only cost you $100. But if you find it at the latest stage of the production, it's going to cost you thousands and thousands and probably millions of dollars. So why am I saying this? Because of the lack of infrastructure, many a times the IT team cut corner and they provide a subset of the master database, the parent database. By doing that, whatever the enhancements you are putting on to the application, you are exposing a very limited set of data during the DevOps, and then you let that poor kid, that enhancement, go out to the open world and face all the data anomalies. Now, how do you expect that kid to run where he can barely walk? So that's exactly what the problem is right now with the industry, that to cut corners, they provide subsetting of the data, and that's not the ideal way of testing all your features that you have developed. So that means you always lack full-scale testing. Now, you can, of course, provision the full-scale testing, but for that, you have to spend hundreds and thousands of dollars on storage, on software licenses, all these things, and which I don't think is an ideal situation. So, needless to say, if you do a subsetting, that leads to poor quality and low customer satisfaction. Then, slide number 12 is a concern on security and governance, which is, as I mentioned earlier, who is accessing my data? Of course, I created a copy. I gave it to my SI. or my incumbent. Now I don't have any track of where he is taking the data, what is he doing with the data, how long he is retaining the data, and then has he destroyed the data or not? Now, if the DPL comes into action, or if you talk about the European market, where GDPR is already there, you cannot afford to do such things. These are kind of a federal offense. If you are sharing your customer sensitive data to an entity who is not authorized to have it. So just to touch the tip of the iceberg, because that's another topic of debate, and we can come to that later. But that's a message that this slide is trying to give you, that you always have concern on security, because whatever you are doing right now, the practice or the process that you are following, it is not auditable. So remember, this word auditable, we'll come back to that later. Now, I'll spend only 30 seconds on this slide number 13, which talks about no automation, no continuous integration, because you lack a parallel environment. Sometimes you do subsetting. So whatever the enhancements you are coming up with, you do a one-time testing, you do a one-time quality analysis, and again you will give the infrastructure back to the IT team. In the meanwhile, if the priority changes and you come up with another enhancement request or something, you cannot put it on top of the work that you already have done, because that work is destroyed, as you have given the infrastructure back to the IT team. So there is no automation or no continuous integration, which is possibly the basic backbone of just to roll it back and putting it in one slide. If you look at the slide number 14, which talks about the current situation. What do we have? Say, for example, you have 1 terabyte of any database in production under a layer of application. You have to give, under ideal situation, of course, as you don't want to cut corners, you want to give full scale data to your development guys, your quality assurance people, your integration team, your testing team. And likewise, if you have 9 such cases, then you are giving them 1 terabyte of physical copy to each team, thereby consuming 9 terabyte of storage for 1 terabyte of application data. This is the current scenario that you have. Moving on, if you look at the slide number 15, which I believe has a little bit of animation and all, you can see that in this solution, what we are doing, instead of just creating physical copies and handing it over to the required team, we are creating an in-between virtual golden copy, creating a golden copy of that solution. And that golden copy is sitting in a different server, and then that server is throwing unlimited number of virtual copies without even occupying a 1 megabyte or 2 megabyte of physical storage space. So look, try to understand what is happening here. For 1 terabyte of application, you are creating a 1 terabyte of golden copy. And before I go there, let me tell you that when you create a golden copy through VDP, Virtual Data Pipeline Solution, the data gets compressed, and you get possibly 700 GB or 600 GB, to say the least. And then you are projecting it to any user through the IP address any number of times. And that provision takes minutes. Imagine it happening in a physical scenario where you are giving the storage connection to this guy. This will take hours, if not days, and you lose a lot of time. But through this solution, you are giving them unlimited number of copies within minutes, and this has been proven. We have done it, and customers are going ballistic about this feature. So by doing that, if you look at the purple table, what is happening? A large finance customer, which has an Oracle database, which used to take 21 days for the cloning, now taking only 20 minutes. Likewise, you see the table, imagine the number of days we are saving. On the icing on the cake is, of course, the 90% storage space. So instead of consuming that 9 terabyte, you are only consuming that 1.1 terabyte of storage space. So this is what I was talking about, that elevator pitch. This is the massive value that you are getting out of this solution. Now we'll go a little deeper into the dynamics. What is it doing? If we look at the slide number 16, so there are three phases here. One is the capture phase. Irrespective of the database is what you have, whether it is Oracle, whether it is MS SQL, Postgres, IBM DB2, MS SQL, SAP databases, you name it. We create a golden copy out of this by invoking the native technology. For example, in case of Oracle, we invoke RMAN. Through the RMAN at a block level, we create a copy which is very application specific. We create a copy of that, and that copy. So for example, today you are taking the first copy from the production to the golden copy. That becomes the day zero copy. And after that, it works on a technology called Coffee, a little fancy name, of course. But the Coffee stands for Capture Once, Forever Incremental. So all those incremental synthetic copies are maintained in a day one, day two, day three versions. So this seamless versionization helps you to get the data of any historical time frame. Say, for example, there are two guys. One is a developer, one is a tester. The developer is saying, I need today's data. So immediately you can spin off today's data within minutes to his server. Now, the other tester says, I need 7 days old data. So in the UI of the tool, there is a time scroll bar where you can scroll the time bar to 7 days back and then freeze it there and then project that database of that data size to this tester guy who can then access this data, and they will feel no difference. This is completely LDAP integratable. So if I have the required credentials with myself, I simply log into the tool with my right set of credentials and then start working on the copy that has been provisioned to me. Suppose I did my work today, I left it at 6 p.m., whatever the work I have done. Tomorrow, if I come and start and flash my screen, I would start the work from where I left it yesterday. That's exactly what happens, and that is the meaning of this manage phase, where the tool automatically manage all these things: your versionization of the databases, your different requirements in terms of what size of the data you need, and that is really another important use case. I'm just out of excitement telling you, we can pin it on the wall that it can also be used for quick recovery. So just again pin it on your wall so that we can come back to it later. If you are using any backup software, it does a dedupe, and then it takes a lot of time for recovery. Using this solution, you can also do a quick recovery using the time scroll bar. Okay. Talking about the third phase, different use cases, and then in the manage phase, the tool also provides you a workflow engine in which you can define the SLAs, in what frequency you want to replicate the data from the production to the golden copy. You can define all these policies, and it will be fairly automatically can be managed. Going to the slide number 17, again, another representation of how it works. You can see on the top the production applications. Then going further down, you create a golden copy. Then it creates a snapshot pool, and then it projects to a self-service environment where the users or the business users can spin off the databases on their own, of course, with the permission of the centralized IT team, and they will get the role-based access. At the same time, you can, while you're doing it in your own data center on-premise, you can also do it in the cloud, and you can provision the databases. It has those REST APIs available to work with Jenkins of the world for automation in cloud. Those things can also be done. So fairly easy to understand what are the dynamics of this tool. going to slide number 18, this is another very important use case which I was talking about earlier, that how can I seamlessly provision data masking? So what you do try to do a data masking. It is fairly a painstaking manual process. You need to run the scripts, or you have the tool. You select the rows and the tables in the database, and you do the data masking. Now, using this tool does not provide data masking, but this tool can actually boost your data masking ability. Of course, IBM has the data masking tool, Optim Data Masking, which can coexist with this data masking, or if you already have invested on any of the data masking solution, it can coexist with that. It can be very tightly integrated with that data masking solution. And then once you set the rules in the workflow, remember the manage phase of that application, you can create those SLAs, create those workflows, and then you just kick it and forget it, kind of a phenomenon. You simply let the tool decide whenever there is a requirement of masking. You just feed the data will get scrambled on its own, and it will be projected to the users the way they want. So, talking about so if you go to this next slide, which is basically the feature summary, which is talking about. I hope you are getting the right representation of this slide because it has a bit of animation. So the first one is the provision of multi-terabyte cloud data sets instantly without subsetting. And why it matters? Because it reduces the wait time, improves productivity. There's no brainer there. It can be worked on any cloud. It has that elasticity, flexibility, and freedom. Then the third one is it can work with any tier of storage, whether it is a flash or whether it is a SAN, or even it can work with the tape library storage as well. So that way, depending on the policies of the data, the aging of the data, you can define policies and it can reduce your cost dramatically. Very important aspect is the self-service feature of this tool. So instead of the GMIT being bogged down with the workload and the request coming from different teams, he can facilitate this as a self-service platform, which is an API driven, and a significant amount of automation can be brought into the picture. And as I mentioned earlier, it can also be flashed to the cloud, where Jenkins, Puppet, all these applications and automation tools can be used with the REST APIs. Data masking cannot emphasize enough. As I mentioned earlier, it takes care of the control and security. So moving on to the slide number 20, which is a 30,000 feet view of the different features of functionalities. It also has a couple of screenshots of the tool. The tool is very interactive. I would urge all of you to give it a try through demos or POCs and talk to our partner, Alphariddim, and they will facilitate those POCs and demos for you. And the first side, you will love it. I can bet on that. You can read the different functionalities and features that it has. Some importance are multi-cloud portability. You don't need to spend on storage anymore on the cloud because of the feature. Then the self-service provisioning. Then the high-performance virtual cloning. Instant rollback. This is one of the very compelling use case for a bank, that how quickly I can roll back, how instantly I can roll back. The current backup and recovery software was doing the dedupe, so they were not able to do the proper rollback. So this you can do a proper rollback. Going to slide number 21, which is an example. Very quickly, I can tell you in the slide number 21, probably one of the large banks in the world has converted their IT center from a cost center to a profit center. By doing what? By using this tool, they have created a data DBaaS, database as a service. So anytime, whenever there is an application team coming with a request of having a copy of the data, they are doing some internal charge code kind of a concept, and within minutes, the user can have the copy of the data, and they are charging it back to the cost center. So that is how they are using it. And if you look at the slide number 22, virtual copies are literally occupying 1 MB or less space. This is the kind of a value that is bringing on the table. And we will never hesitate to show it to you live, how technology is helping you to save 90% of the storage because of the VDP. So going slightly at 10 a.m., if you can, you can keep on creating. You can send the data to the branches. You can give the full data size copy to the MIS team for the analytical purpose. You name the use cases, and you will have it. So if you look at the slide number 24, this is the VDP in use. What are the different kind of use cases they have? Database as a service, DevOps self-service, point in recovery, which is another very innovative use case curated by one of our customers. Then periodic training that you want to give it to different branches, the data masking. All these are real life implemented, executed use cases of VDP. And the last one is your slide number 25, which is talking about a real case where we deliver this project successfully. And these are the data points which are talking out loud the value props, the success this solution has on the ground. 90% reduction in the DV provisioning time. And this is, by the way, one of the banking customers, they came out with this return on investment, 54% ROI in just 3 years. 80% reduction in masking processing time, 90% improvement in the application enhancement cycle time. So these are some very credible outcome of the solution which has been implemented with our customers. I'll take another couple of minutes in just explaining you. If you go to the slide number 26, the governance process, very three fundamental pillars of governance. So the IT operation team, you might be curious that how am I going to manage this kind of a tool? So the IT operation team can be at the helm of this entire solution. They can manage. They could have the baton of this tool, while the application team can write different policies depending on different what kind of regulations they are under and what kind of policies they want to define in the app. They can do the policy management of the tool, and the business team can be the end user team, which can take care of the different governance practices for the tool. For example, what should be the policy for my third-party vendor? How they should select the applications? What should be the turnaround time? What should be my MIS scenario on which I can create a copy of the MIS? The policy on self-service. So all these things can be controlled by the business team. So very well articulated, very well defined platform, depending on the use case and the need of the different teams. Going to slide number 27, these are a few recent wins we had in India, and we are growing leaps and bounds in terms of acquiring, giving value to our customers. And if any point of time we require more in-depth idea about the solution, you can reach out to us. And I would like to now hand over to our Chief Architect of Alpharism, Mr. Venkatesh, who can probably talk a bit about the technology fabric of this solution. Thank you very much for your time. I'll be here. If you have any queries, please raise your hand and we'll be happy to answer those questions. Thank you. Over to you, Venkat.
Yeah, thanks, Rakesh. I would continue more on the technical side of the presentation. My name is Venkatesh Iyer, and I am the Chief Architect of Alpharism Technologies. We deal with big data technologies and also in DevOps processes, and are the main implementation partner for the VDP solution, where we work very closely with IBM to implement the solution. So I will take you to some of the more technical aspects of VDP, where Rakesh has covered more from the business perspective. I'm covering it more from the technical perspective. So, bit from a business perspective, essentially it's seen that there's a lot of organizations today are going towards digital transformation, and one of the major initiatives people take in digital transformation is around data warehousing, analytics, creating predictive models, making it available across all the channels. And it becomes very important for organizations to make production data available in a test and development environment, which is properly masked and controlled, so that the reporting that is done and the models that are built are reflecting the real life scenarios and are able to deliver value to business, which is expected. So going to the next slide. So this is typically the approach that every organization takes, where it's seen that most of the banks, telecom industries, retail organizations have developed a continuous delivery and integration system where you use tools like Puppet, Jenkins, Ansible, and Chef, which are able to create an orchestration where the codes are checked out of the system, they are compiled, and then they run for the test cases success, and the failures are reported and acted upon them. The other aspect which now comes into the picture is how do we also provision test data in the same sequence so that the execution of the scripts or the testing scripts happen as part of one continuous motion. Hence, if you look at it, VDP plays a very important role when it comes to executing the DevOps approach, especially in the test data management aspects. If you look at a problem at from a magnifying lens perspective, it's in an organization there are multiple developers. There may be parallel development that may be going on in the organization for multiple use cases. Each of them requires their full set of data, production-like data, with the real-life values, which has to be used either for developing, testing an application, or using it to test the data warehousing data, or running reports using various reporting tools like Tableau, Cognos, to be able to look at the metrics. Now, each of the reports require real-life data to be able to validate, especially in the testing and the UAT phase. And it's extremely critical that the data resemble real-life data, but at the same time, they also are catering to the GDPR principles, wherein you are masking some of the critical data, which should not be seen by the developers or the testers. Especially there are organizations that make data available from their warehouse and lake in to third-party organizations who have specialized algorithms that need to be implemented to be able to create a model. So when customer data is getting exposed to these organizations, you will want to mask the data in a particular manner so that the models are consistent in nature, but at the same time, the organization that is implementing the model, that is the implementer, is not able to see the actual customer-related details. So if you look at the statistics that is available to be able to do the cloning, creation of instances, and also doing the masking, you will see that typically for clone times, you will see that in financial companies, it ranges from 21 days to 10 days at the minimum. And this, of course, involves a host of change management process where there is a request that goes to the team, then there is a provisioning based on the SLA, then there are port openings that happen based on that, then which finally culminates in the DBA provisioning the instance and the storage, after which the masked copy is created. And if you look at the current requirements from the business, they want things to be commissioned very fast so that they can test their models, their reports, get the output, and take it to the real life market in terms of implementing better analytics models. There's a lot of time that happens in terms of being able to provision data. So when you look at it, there are four aspects of the problem, which are quality, speed, security, and cost. So as Rakesh touched upon previously, a couple of times, people resort to subsetting of data, which results in inaccurate testing, bugs getting detected very late in the quality cycle, time to market versus quality compromises are made. Ultimately, customers are hit basically because a wrong algorithm, a wrong model will create wrong recommendations and hence may lead to customer dissatisfaction issues. Rogue clones are a general problem in most of the organization because you will keep on creating as many clones as you want for the parallel teams and each having their own instance and storage. Again, controlling the access to each of this also becomes an issue from a governance perspective. So given all this problem, what does virtual data pipeline do? The virtual data pipeline essentially creates what is called as the golden copy of the production database. And from that golden copy, you are virtually able to spin as many virtual instances you want for each of the type of environments. And the space occupied by the virtual instances are practically a small fraction of the actual production database. For example, if you remember, Rakesh talked about 10 TB of database for 9 environments was going to around roughly 10.1 with all the virtual instances put together. So essentially, a couple of things that happen as part of the instant provisioning is there is no requirement of the IT requisition going to the IT team. Any person or any developer team that is given access to spawn an instance can spawn an instance automatically and start working with it. The entire life cycle of 21 days gets shortened to a few hours or a few days. Obviously, this helps in us in catching the defects much early because the data is much more production-like, and you are able to test the reports and the algorithms much early in the life cycle than leaving it the production environment, go-live scenario. The other important aspect is to be able to put in the masking capabilities on top of the data. So as Rakesh pointed out in his discussion, that you either have an existing software or you can actually go in with Optim data masking capabilities. So once the golden copy of the record is created, it is masked, and the masked data is available to all the consumers of the virtual instance. And a role-based access mechanism due to integration with the LDAP services is absolutely possible. The other thing that happens is the virtual instances don't take up much of the storage. You can see almost it is near 0 TB of data that is getting occupied. The other option also it gives you is when you're doing the testing activities, you might end up generating your own data on top of the existing data, which is kept in the context of that particular instance, so that any point in time, you see the data coming from the golden record, the golden copy, plus the additional data that has been created during the testing environment. The other extra advantage this tool happens is it also gives you a capability of creating various snapshots of the images, and you can go to any point in time image to be able to do the testing activities. This slide talks about how this tool comes on the Gartner quadrant, where it comes very shining colors in terms of the capabilities for on-prem and especially also on cloud, because on cloud, you literally end up with a zero footprint on the storage on any object storage like Microsoft or Azure. You don't have to provision anything on the object storage because everything is managed through a virtual instance. These are again the list of the customers that's worldwide. What Rakesh showed you was more of India geography. This is the worldwide customers where implementation has been done. Now, in the copy data solution, you also see that we talked about the DevOps, but it also helps the ops people, because the same solution can be used by the ops people to create a copy, which is a virtual copy for backup, a virtual copy that is for a disaster recovery, a virtual copy for the vault. So the ops guys also benefit from this because they can keep their own snapshot copy, updated snapshot copy. And the dev guys, the DevOps guys, the op guys, dev guys also have the capability to maintain their own dev testing, UAT, performance testing instance in a separate manner. So if you look at it, the same solution is actually catering to two sets of users, the operational user and the dev users, So in the same copy, test data copy, if it is updated on a incremental forever basis, you always have the latest copy. So in case of any disaster that happens, and if the DR also is going through a problem in terms of having the latest data, you can always use this golden copy created by VDP to resurrect the instant at the very minimal effort coming from the organization side. Now, this is a very simple principle. So when we talk of the left-hand side capture, we not only talk of the relational databases like SQL Server, Oracle, we also cater to SAP, not only to the ECC version, but also to the HANA versions, where the backup or the copy is created in the native format, which means that when we take a copy of the HANA, it is in the native HANA format, and it can be used directly as part of the development, production, or the UAT environment. So that's the advantage. From management perspective, you can manage the copies on a block storage, on an object storage. And the use cases, there are unlimited use cases, especially if you look at the application development, mobile development platform, and more so in the area of analytics platform, ML and AI. This turns out to be a boon for most of the people to be able to do testing, development, and validation on real life production quality data. There is also an important component as part of the VDP, which is called a global VDP Global Manager. As you see in the image, you see multiple horizontal slots, which are the various instances created for the various environment. And the various balloon or callout items represent the snapshot of the item taken at different points in time, which indicates that if I'm doing a testing today and there is a problem with my test case, I can actually switch to an instance which is 1 week back and do my testing to figure out whether when I developed the code within last 1 week, did any change happen in my code which is creating the problem. So that's because the VDP manager maintains multiple snapshots of the data slices that are getting created and presents the way the vision which you want as of today, as of last month, based on how we want it to be provisioned. Now, this is an overall process that happens when you are using a solution like a VDP in the CI/DI process, where you typically have check-in of the code, where you write the code, when you check in the code, which gets into GitHub, from where the frequent builds are happening through the Maven tool. Then we have the provisioning platform where we use Puppet, Ansible, ServiceNow to do that. Urban Code is the IBM solution for doing that. Once the provisioning has happened, we can actually now invoke VDP using the APIs to provision the virtual database for the test environment. We can deploy the latest build, execute the test automation framework, and finally get the report on the entire process and the test results. In between, if you want, we can also mask the data so that data that is relevant is only seen by the people. Now, customer benefits, you would see typically that most of the statistics indicate that days are getting converted into hours and minutes, and this is a major ease of operation from an IT perspective, and also from the development community perspective. It gives them ease of being able to spawn an instance the way they want it without actually hitting the storage. And the other thing is also being optimal on the licensing part of the databases. So this, again, the economic impact, typically measured ROIs are 25% faster to market, 90% storage cost saving, database license saving, because you can create one virtual instance with multiple databases coming into the picture, quick provisioning, no extra storage for provisioning thin clients, one instance managing multiple types of virtual instances. This all lead to quick delivery of the testing activities and delivery of the code, delivery of the models, and hence it has been seen that people who have implemented these solutions have achieved very good time to market and more reliable solutions coming into the picture. So in summary, if you look at BDP, it helps enterprises with database cloning and instant recovery anywhere. If you look at it, the use cases that supported are multiple prototypes, DR, cloud migration, and a host of other things you can do reporting on top of it, because many organizations want to do reporting on a non-OLTP environment. We can use it to do reporting on top of those environments. The use cases are quite a lot. So this kind of brings us close to the presentation. So we just would like to see if there are any questions that have come up from people.
Yeah, thank you, Rakesh and Venkatesh, for insights. Quite topical theme we discussed today. So I could see that there are a couple of questions from Mahesh and Manoj. Dharmaraj, can we try unmuting their lines?
Yeah, just
Yeah, Mahesh, you can go ahead with your question. I think his audio is not connected. Dharma, you can unmute KV Shetty or Manoj Lala. Manoj, please go ahead with your question. We have Manoj, can you hear us? We can't. The line is not clear.
So,
And can it?
yeah, so I saw that question on the deployment of the microservices. So no, this is not for microservices deployment. This is more for test data provisioning and deployment. I think somebody had asked that question.
Yeah, and I could spot one more question here from Mayank Desai. Whether we can use VDP to create DR drills, and during this drill, whether I can still have production users doing the transaction?
Yep, you can do that. You can use it for the DR drill, and at the same time, you can also do your production activity, because there is a concept of incremental forever. So the production will keep on doing the activities. Obviously, in the DR scenario, what would happen is your DR database would not be available, and your data center database will not be available. Your DR would have taken over. So you would have rebuilt the instance with the minimum RTO at the DR center, and you can start using the instance, because in this case, the replication is happening at the block level and it is already synchronized. So definitely it's a good use case to look at.
It is followed by one more question, Venkatesh and Rakesh. How many users can access the DR drills database?
I mean, it is almost like any regular access that people do. There is no constraint on that, because it's an instance that is getting provisioned based on the compute that has been provisioned on that. Because generally people either do 100% provisioning of the compute and storage, or they do 50% provisioning of the compute and 100% of the storage. So it all basically depends on what infrastructure has been provided at the DR level.
Great. Thanks for that. In which type of, here's another question from Ashok Patel. In which type of database use for blockchain transaction and fingerprint storage? What kind of database usually one should use for blockchain transaction and fingerprint storage?
Blockchain transactions can, I mean, if you go to the blockchain providers, most of them are cloud providers. So Azure has a blockchain, IBM has a blockchain. So these are pretty much proprietary in nature. There are options to use NoSQL database as a backend to the blockchain. But blockchains as a cloud is not covered as the offering from a VDP perspective. So there is no correlation between the blockchain and VDP at this point in time.
Yeah, thanks. Dharma, can you help me figure out if there are any more questions? Or anybody who wants to ask it via, like anybody has raised hand?
no hand raised.
No. So with that, I think here we are at the end of the session. Rakesh and Venkatesh,
would request the final word from your side if you can throw some light, like the key takeaways from today's webinar.
Actually, I hope that the audience got some exposure to the capabilities that the tool operates. We are highly excited to take this solution to the market because A, we have found that it's useful to the customer. It has a direct impact on the ROI. Two, the implementation life cycles are very short, and deriving the ROI for the customer is very quick. So especially banks, smaller banks, NBFCs, cooperative banks, insurance companies will find this an adequate use case because of the variety of applications they have and the initiatives in the area of data management, analytics, governance. Everything is available in this tool to take care of the entire DevOps process from a test management perspective. Rakesh, you want to say something from your side?
Yeah, thanks, Venkatesh. Am I audible?
Yeah.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah, I mean, as you rightly put it across, Venkatesh, the use cases could be as many as you could think of. Whatever the use you have for additional copy requirement, whether you want to take and give it to the MIS team for running reports, you want to take and give it to the branches for training, for data analysis, you want to give it a copy to your incumbent to do the testing, development, quality analysis. Wherever there is the very requirement of or dependency on your production database, imagine that I wish I had a copy of my production database to do this activity. There you go. You do have the need of this solution. Now, what are the other multi-dimensional use cases? As I rightly put it across, you just need to think of what do I need to do, or what is the requirement that I have, or what I should do if I had this additional copy of the application database. You will need VDB. I don't want to limit the use cases, and that's the reason I'm putting in a generic statement that whenever you feel you have a need of a copy of your production database, you should come to VDB, and it will cater to your requirement. Thank you. Thanks a lot for your time.
Thank you, Rakesh, and thank you, Venkatesh, for those insights. Yeah, thank you so much. It was great having both of you today. With that, let's wrap it here. I hope you all enjoyed the session. For any query or feedback, you can reach out to me at krishna.mukherjee@timesgroup.com. And thank you once again for joining the Economic Times live webinar powered by Alpha Rhythm Technologies. Thank you. Goodbye.